One of the ways the Reno Police Department enforce pedestrian and motor vehicle laws are undercover operations that test vehicles.
The road, and it has the crosswalk, right? The officers will cross the crosswalk, and if a car doesn't yield to the pedestrian, the officer has a radio or visually tells us that the car violated, and then tells us how it violated. We stop the car and we write it a ticket. Now, you can't just step out in front of a car and expect them to stop. So what we do is we take the speed limit, let's say it's 25 miles an hour, okay? And we calculate what is the average braking distance for 25 miles an hour. Then we calculate what is the average, first called perception reaction time. I see a pedestrian, calculate that distance out. We use 3 seconds, which is huge. The average person reacts in a second to a second and a half. Benefit of doubt for the driver, okay? Any car that's within here that doesn't stop for the pedestrian, we let it go. Because we can't say in court that the car should have been able to stop.
Right.
But if the car, so we go out and we mark the street, or we put a cone out, or we find a landmark. The officer starts crossing. When the car is outside that limit, and it violates, we get a ticket, right? And when the officer sees that they're outside this limit, and he starts walking, and they don't stop before they get to here, then they get a ticket. Late him.
Right.
And pedestrian safety in the crosswalks, not just the pedestrians in the crosswalk, you have to stop. These violations we see for drivers are failing to yield to the right-of-way put to a pedestrian, right, and passing a vehicle stopped for a pedestrian.
Although pedestrians have the right-of-way, it is important that both the vehicle and pedestrian have the responsibility to stay alert. Always remember that you can see cars better than they can see you.
Not taking away any of the responsibility from a driver to keep their eyes open as well. There's a lot of things that distract drivers. Cell phones, stereo, eating, kids, arguing with your spouse. Drivers have to eliminate all that as well to be safe. Drivers have to eliminate drinking. Everything gets worse with drinking when it comes to driving. You just can't help it. There's a relationship there where both have to be responsible and keep their eyes open and do the right thing. So everybody thinks about the driver having to do the right thing. Nobody thinks about the pedestrian having to do the right thing and keep their eyes open.
As a driver, I feel very uncomfortable with pedestrians walking on the street because I'm paying attention to a million other things like the traffic signs, the speed limits, construction zones, and it's really hard to pay attention to pedestrians and see them walking. It's dangerous also when the crosswalks are blinking and some pedestrians aren't crossing and people still go through them, and I see this multiple times. And it's also dangerous with bike riders because they zoom right past you and you don't see them coming, and it's very easy to hit them.
Earlier this year, I put together an operation where we targeted pedestrian violators because I did some research. A very high percentage of our fatal pedestrian accidents are the fault of the pedestrian. They are either walking in the street when they shouldn't be, dart out in front of a car. Since we had one on McCarran where a gentleman was walking in the dark in the travel lane. He was walking down the road, got hit by a car. It's his fault. He shouldn't have been walking in the road. We had a pedestrian crossing against a red light. Red don't walk light, gets smoked by a car, pedestrian's at fault. And then I looked at vehicle versus pedestrian accidents, all of them, and on the order of 90+% yield injuries. More than 90% of vehicle versus pedestrian accidents are injury accidents. So with the high percentage of fatals being the result, the fault of the pedestrian. And I didn't even look at fault of, overall fault. It hurt when you get hit by a car.
Right.
We put together an operation where we target violating pedestrians as well. Jaywalking, walking in the street. We call it stepping suddenly from a curb, which is darting out in front of a car. You're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to walk in the street. You have a sidewalk. There are certain rules where you walk in the street against the flow of traffic, you don't have the sidewalk, all that kind of BS stuff. But this is a city.
Right.
Downtown we have sidewalks. You walk on the sidewalk, right? And you don't cross in the middle of the block. Those are things that get you killed. We had 120 contacts wrote. In April 2011, I looked back, I think a year, okay? And 75%, eight fatal pedestrian accidents, 6 of them the fault of the pedestrians. 203 accidents so far that year, 65 of them were pedec. This was just 2011 numbers.
Okay.
And 200 injury accidents, 212 injured parties, so there was multiple injuries. And I don't know what the dates were from that. But the things I know for sure are that for the first 4 months of 2011, 32% of the accidents were vehicle pet accidents.
Oh, wow.
For the last 2 years, we had 8 fatals up to that point. 6 of them were the fault of the pedestrian. And then we'd only written 121 citations so far that year to pedestrians.